Welcome to the Peak News. I'm Roland Rainey, your guest host for The Watchman. Hi, I'm Goldman, and you're listening to AM 1460, FM 101.1 The Answer. We're also live streaming on Facebook at The Peak News Media and YouTube at The Peak News. So The Peak, this is where we say the quiet stuff out loud. So The Peak News is a truth-telling and First Amendment defending broadcast, an internet news source for citizens of the Pikes Peak region. And we invite you to join us as a citizen journalist, tech intern, a guest, and or a sponsor. All of the info could be found on the website, www.thepeak.news. Today's broadcast is brought to you by Springs Dentist and Dr. Craig Summer of Holistic Dentistry in Colorado Springs, along with Mayweather Boxing and Fitness here in the Colorado Springs region. Now, today's show is quite unique. We will have a guest coming on to the show. I will wait to introduce that guest because he's going to bring something very unique and talented for us. But also, this is one of the first unique times that a sports segment will be here on The Peak. Now, why is that so interesting? It's interesting because a lot of you who may know me, Roland Rainey, as the newly elected city councilman for District 6, I also work for the Denver Broncos. I work in their community impact division, and I also am one of their team leads for a lot of their youth and high school football programs. And today's edition, we will be talking about youth and high school football, the direction that sports is going with education. Our guest is also not just a head football coach, but he's also a teacher. So we'll get a very unique perspective about being a teacher and also going on and off the field dealing with our youth. So that's going to be one of the most unique things that we're going to talk about today. Also, we're going to hit really home into what the Denver Broncos are doing across the entire state of Colorado. Currently, they have struck a great deal with the foundation and Rydell Helmet, where they will be providing Axiom helmets to all football programs in the entire state of Colorado. That is very unique. That is very interesting because this is their investment into the safety and the protection of those players. And we're also going to take a sneak peek into the NFL, being the fact that I've actually worked in the NFL as a scout, as a employee of the Denver Broncos. We're going to dive a little bit into what does the NFL portal looks like and what are the impacts moving forward, especially when it comes to legislation. There are talks about putting legislation out there dealing with the NFL and how students are moving between universities. So buckle up. This is going to be one great ride here on The Peak today. So once again, I am Roland Rainey, the host of The Peak today. I'm filling in for The Watchman. Hi, I'm Goldman, and you are listening to AM 1460, FM 101.1. So as we're getting ready to wrap up and go to commercial, one of the other things that we're going to discuss is in the education system right now, there are a lot of legislative items that are coming down from Denver. We're going to get into that and see how that plays into the sports arena. A lot of you are very aware of legislation that have come down about unique aspects of gender dealing with sports. So we're going to talk about that also and see how that is going to be impacting local sports. That is going to be something that we all as local citizens have to pay close attention to. We're going to have to work with our educators, with our school districts to help them guide and navigate the rest of the student population with a lot of that legislation that is starting to bubble up and come down from different areas. But also, there is legislation, and there's a group of folks. I mentioned earlier about the Denver Broncos and the NFL and the Axiom helmets. There is a major concern about helmets and the data that will be acquired from those helmets when it comes to health. Once again, you're listening to The Peak, AM 1460, FM 101.1.
You've done wonderful. Yeah. I was trying to make sure that this segment goes on, so just to let you know.
Okay. So the next segment that is about 10 minutes, I believe.
Yes.
Yeah. And once again, once he said he's on the way. So once he arrives and texts me, I'll kind of let you know that he's here, and we'll go from there.
All right. So the guest will call you.
Yeah, he's gonna text me and let me know.
All right.
Yeah.
Thank you. We're down to 15 minutes of. We're down to like less than 15 minutes. I mean 15 seconds of the.
Welcome back to The Peak, and thanks for joining us today. I am Roland Rainey, your guest host. filling in for the Watchman, Hyam Goldman. And once again, this is a very special segment because for the first time, we are actually having a sports segment here on the Peak News. We're going to have a guest that will be coming on a little bit later, and I'm looking forward to having that individual on. He's coming with a breadth of experience, not just in the coaching realm, but he's also a high school teacher, one of our great educators in the Pikes Peak region, and he's going to bring some very unique perspective to a lot of things dealing with sports, dealing with legislation, and how he has to balance that as a teacher and as a coach. As I mentioned in the first segment, I also work for the Denver Broncos. A lot of folks out there may or may not know about that. I've been with the Denver Broncos for about going on close to 3 years now. And during that time frame, I've watched the Broncos Foundation do some wonderful things for the entire state of Colorado. And most recently, they did something very, very unique. And that is they have put one of the largest investments in their foundation's history, where they are investing into every high school in the state of Colorado by partnering with Rydell Helmets, and they are providing them a new state-of-the-art helmet to help with safety protocols in the game of football. Now, this is very unique because I'm quite sure, like many of you that may be out there, remember the days of the very not so protective soft helmets that didn't provide a lot of protection. And then there was a lot of concussions that came from that. There's a lot of injuries, life-sustaining injuries that evolved from that. And we are now at a point where we have to start leaning in and leaning forward to protect our student population, to make sure that they can enjoy the game of football, learn from the strategy of football, have the camaraderie with their friends in school, but we have to put safety first. It has to be a priority. And the Denver Broncos organization did that. The largest investment in foundation history. And this is how this actually works. The foundation, through every high school in the state of Colorado, over a 4-year tenure, will invest helmets into those high schools. Each player will get their own individual helmet. Let me repeat that. Each player will get their own individual helmet. Now, why is that so important? When we talk about tracking the safety of a player, how many hits are they taking to the head? How many times did they have to come out of a game? That is all going to be tracked through this new technologically advanced helmet, this Axiom helmet, where that data is going to be collected, and the coaches, their staff, can actually work with the parents to make sure that they are protecting those students. Now, I would be remiss not to mention this definitely comes with a little bit of legislative snafooing, let's call it that, because there's some legislators that believe, along with other groups out there, that collecting this data could be a violation of that individual's right. That is a very unique perspective from a legislative perspective, because we are out here trying to protect the players. Now, definitely there is a great understanding there to make sure that data is used for sports purpose only. This data is not to be used to make any type of assessments of a player out on that football field, but it is a tool for the staff or the coaches to use to protect those players. For example, if a player gets a concussion, if that player comes out for 2 or 3 games, goes into a concussion protocol, and then has to get back out on the football field, and let's say within another week gets another concussion. Now we're tracking that data, not only tracking the data, but we're also assessing how hard these hits are. That is the level of detail that are going to be coming through these data sensors in these very unique helmets. And once again, you have to give it up for whether you are a Colorado native and you love the Denver Broncos or not. Um, this is definitely one of the best investments of an NFL program to put across high schools across the entire state. One of the things that we did is we went on a 6-city tour to go to high schools to start educating coaches, their staff, their athletic directors of what this process looks like. Matter of fact, here in Colorado Springs at Mitchell High School, we had the one and only Ed McCaffrey, Sr. We had him here in the area to actually meet some of the players, talk to some of the coaches, and be a part of this very unique process. As I mentioned, we've been through a lot of different cities. We've been to Rifle, we've been to Lamar, we've been all the way out to Gunnison. We've been to a lot of great places, and it was so awesome to be received by the student population, be received by those teachers because they know the quality of this investment and what it's going to do for their student population. When it goes back to legislation, we don't know where this is going to land, okay? But I will say, while there are concerns about how this data is going to be used from a medical concussion protocol perspective, the one thing that these legislators should know, it is all about the player safety. No teacher, no coach, no athletic director, no district staff member should be using any of the players' medical data for anything other than playing the sport of football and protecting them throughout their entire career. And to be very honest, this is something that's very unique for high school, but there is a true in-depth protocol at the NFL level that a lot of these players go through. As fans of the game, a lot of us sit at home, watch the games, and you see someone who may be woozy, wobbling on the field. Maybe there's a spotter in the stadium who noticed that they were a little bit off kilter, off balance, and decided, hey, we need to get that person off the field and attend to them. And then they go potentially after answering a series of questions, doing a quick medical assessment, a decision is made on whether or not that person needs to go into concussion protocol. Once that happens, that is a process, ladies and gentlemen. So what you see on TV, and you may see another player that comes back, within a 3 days, that is not taken lightly. That is a very serious, in-depth protocol process. And yes, there are some players out there that I think that we all have seen that make you a little nervous on how many concussions that they've had and how come, the safety of that player potentially may not be placed at the forefront versus what the player desire is. And at the end of the day, the doctors, they have a responsibility. The general managers, the owners of these organizations have responsibility to make sure that they protect those players. And oftentimes you do get a player that feels better. They pass the medical assessments and they get back out on the field. And, the moment they take another hit, it jars them again. So you do get those one-off scenarios where you do get many of you that are sports fans out there, you may get a Tua Tagovailoa who get a series of concussions and for whatever reason can bounce right back. But this is something that's going to be on our mind for quite some time, and we definitely have to take a hard look at this. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to the Peak AM 1460 FM 101, The Answer.
Looks like he's not here yet. Is it?
Yeah, he did mention, I told him to text me when we get here. I mean, we're halfway through the segment, and that was about 20 minutes ago.
Oh.
So he should be pulling up pretty soon.
Okay. Hopefully he'll be here. Um, Whenever he responds, let me know, and I'll let him in.
Let me see if I can get a time hack on him.
All right. One minute.
How long is this segment?
That's the next segment is going to be 4 minutes.
The one that's coming up is just going to be 4? Because the one I just did was 10 minutes, right?
Yes, each segment are different timings. So the other one's going to be like this segment will be 4.
Okay.
So
That's easy.
other than that, 30 minutes and 30 seconds left.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Peak News. Thanks for joining us today on this special edition, a sports segment, the first ever here on the Peak News. I'm Roland Rainey, guest hosting, filling in for the Watchman, Hyam Goldman. So, Hyam, wishing you a great day out there. We've been on this special segment talking about the NFL. And the reason why we're talking about the NFL and some of the things that are happening is because a lot of you may or may not know that I, Roland Rainey, besides being your newly elected city councilman for District 6, I also work for the Denver Broncos and have worked for the Denver Broncos going on close to 3 years now. And we were talking about the Broncos Foundation and their major investment into high school football programs across the entire state. So a lot of these programs are going to have something very unique and very special by getting these advanced helmets to help with safety of the players. Priority number one, safety of the players. And of course, there is some legislation and there's some discussion about the privacy of medical data that will be coming out of these helmets in preparation to allow these players to use them and keep track of concussion protocol. So that is something that is going to be very important for all of us to keep our eyes on, especially those of you out there driving, listening in, or sitting at home listening in, or in your office listening to the Peak News. That is something that you want to keep an eye on because it may affect your kid and something that, as a family, you may need to talk through. The one other topic that we want to jump into is this NFL portal. Excuse me, this college portal. We got the NCAA. We got players that are bouncing around from college to college and using the portal system to advance themselves or to take advantage of an opportunity. And then some of this is translating to the NFL because it's definitely putting players in a better position. However, there is a lot of argument and a lot of concern out there that this NFL portal process is hindering competition, ladies and gentlemen, hindering competition because much like some of the NBA type teams where you get these all stars that come together and build these super teams, you're starting to see a lot of college programs that are going after talent, especially five-star top recruits, and building teams around those individuals. And how is that going to affect the program moving forward? Is it a hindrance on competition? Is it giving players too much of an advantage? But more importantly, money, ladies and gentlemen, money. The type of money that these players are making at the college level. Is there even incentive anymore to quickly rush out of the college arena and go right into the NFL draft? You may see players actually stay another year or continue their 4-year program all the way through because the way the process is laid out now with the NIL, the name, image, and likeness part of this process, players are making money, a lot of money, to play at specific colleges because they can get more name recognition. It should be about the educational experience. I think we all can agree to that. But there are players that are looking at this as an opportunity to make money, to secure their futures, especially as they continue to seek out an opportunity in the NFL. So, what does that look like? More importantly, we talked about high school in the early segment. What does that look like for high schools? Are you now going to start having a trickle down effect to these five-star recruits where they may go to another high school to highlight their talents and their skills, maybe even a private school? And there's a lot of private schools that get a lot of attention out there in the sports arena. What does what type of effect does that have on sports? More importantly, what does it do? Does it take away from the educational experience that we all send our kids to college to receive? It's a huge topic. Ladies and gentlemen, that is something that we got to keep our eyes on. You're listening to the Peak News, AM 1460, FM 101.1. We'll be right back.
No reply?
Second.
No reply yet?
Yes. It's 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 3:30. At 3:26, he said he was 7 minutes out.
7 minutes.
So that puts him here. He should be like literally pulling up close to the parking lot.
I don't know what his vehicle is like, but
I don't know. I think he drives a truck.
a truck. Okay. That's a yeah. I don't.
Yeah, he said 7 minutes. That was at 3:26. So I mean, it's 3:30 right now.
Yeah. So what is gonna be four? 4 minutes. 1 minute for the commercials. 1 minute for commercials.
Okay. And how long is this segment?
It's gonna be if I could do the math, like about it's 12 minutes and 10 seconds.
12:10.
Yes.
Good.
Alrighty. a lot of talking, but I'm sure it will be nice. Whenever you're doing a show and he texts you during it, let me know.
He says he's at the light. I'm
He's at the
guessing
light.
he's at the light. I'm guessing it must be the light, the intersection right up here. So he should be pulling up shortly.
Yeah, I think it's the parking lot somewhere around this area. Okay. I want to get this going. Whenever he's here, let me know.
Well, welcome back to the Peak News, and thanks for joining us today on this special segment, the first ever of its kind here on the Peak, a sports segment. I'm Roland Rainey, your guest host for The Watchman, Chaim Goldman, and we are talking about a variation of headlines in the sports arena specific to the state of Colorado with the Denver Broncos and one of the most significant investments into high school football across the entire state, and that is a partnership with Rydell Helmets and providing the Axiom helmets to all high school programs in the state of Colorado because they wanted to invest into the safety of the players, provide some advanced technology that can help protect the players, and that is one significant investment. We've been around the state, and I say we because, as I mentioned in the earlier segment, not only am I your recently elected city councilman for District 6, I also work for the Denver Broncos, and I am a part of the community impact team where we made this announcement, and we went on a 6-city tour where we spoke with a lot of high schools, a lot of athletic directors, coaches, about this new process and what does it mean for them. How will the helmets be distributed out to all the players? And the very unique thing about this is these helmets will stay with a high school player. That is something that is very unique. I think anyone who's played the sport of football in high school, you may be lucky to get your same helmet unless you went out and purchased one personally. Um, Oftentimes, those helmets get recycled through variation of players. But this is the one time a helmet will be assigned to a player because the data sensors inside the helmet to track concussions, to track impact, that is going to be unique and specific to that player. Now, a lot of you out there listening in may be wondering, well, what happens if a helmet gets cracked? What happens if a player has a situation where they have to get a new helmet? Well, guess what? That helmet goes back to the factory, it gets fixed, and it goes right back to that player. So that player will always have a helmet designated for them. It is a very quick turnaround, so the player should not lose any playing time on the football field. We also talked about the the NCAA portal and the impacts that it's having on college football competition and the NFL. There is a very direct correlation between players bouncing around, taking advantage of NIL. NIL, you probably have heard it on the news, the name, image, and likeness, where players can brand themselves and make money off it now in college and get paid pretty handsomely for it. With that being said, what is the impact? What is the impact of competition? Are we now going to start having these little micro super teams that are being built at different regions? And will that put other teams at disadvantages? We've already seen it here in our own state with our very own Deion Sanders and the Colorado Buffaloes. He has definitely taken full advantage of the portal, and he is making sure that this is something that will help advance his program. And he's not the only one. I know he's the one that gets the most attention because it is Neon Sanders, prime time. and he gets a lot of attention. But this is something that we have to really dive into a lot more and see what the long-term impacts are going to be, not for the NFL. Let's put the NFL off to the side for a second. But what is going to be the impact to the players, to the institutions, when they have a coach who's looking to build a program with talent, people, five-star recruits that are committing to one school, but as soon as someone offers them a bigger, better NIL package, they jump ship and they go to another institution. You know, I think a lot of people would agree that some of these players should be accommodated for uh, the utilization of their name and their talents. But at what cost? At what cost to a program does something like this really hinders a coach's ability to do something effectively with a program? And this is something that we're going to talk about with our guest who's going to be coming on here shortly. Our guest is a former wide receiver at the collegiate level. He is a head coach. He's also played at the semi-professional level. And I'm quite sure, especially being an educator also, he's going to have a very unique perspective about it. And I can't wait to bring him on. We'll have him on here shortly to really deep dive into a lot of these different things. Ladies and gentlemen, we're not saying that this is something that needs to go to the wayside when it comes to the portal, but should there be a better management system in place to make sure that players are not hopping around every year because they're looking for bigger bags of money and they want a better opportunity to put themselves in a unique category to get themselves in the NFL? I think this is definitely a topic that is going to be long, long, long um, overdue with deeper conversations. And who knows what the NCAA will do in the next couple of years, because I think they've already seen um, how this is starting to play itself out on the larger scale. So, once again, our guest that will be coming on, let's go ahead and kill the suspense and give you a heads up on who he is. Ladies and gentlemen, the guest that we will have coming on the next segment is the head coach of Mesa Ridge. That is Jerimi Calip. Jerimi has played football at the collegiate level at Oklahoma State. That is Western Oklahoma State University. He was a wide receiver there. Jerimi also has played semi-professional football, and he's done that over a career, well over 10 plus years of dedicating himself to that level of professionalism. And then Jerimi also served in our military. So thanks to all of our troops out there that are home and abroad. Coach Calip was also a member of the Army, served for several years, is a dedicated veteran to our community, and we definitely look forward to talking to him about that experience also. Jerimi also has done something pretty unique here in Colorado Springs. He also, back in October, he was named by the Denver Broncos as the coach of the week in October. So he has done some very unique things here in his career. And I'm quite sure he's going to have something to say about the Broncos helmet investment because, of course, his school definitely will benefit from that. And being a former collegiate player, I would love to get, and I'm quite sure all of you that are listening in would love to hear what his perspective is on the NFL, the NCAA portal and how that is impacting not just college football, but how it's impacting the NFL and how a lot of these owners and general managers are making their decisions on bringing people into their organization. So this is going to be very, very exciting to have Calip. He has definitely led his high school in a very professional manner. He is definitely one of the most sought after coaches that I've seen and had the experience of being around. But I think a lot of us, when you talk about professionalism, the way he carries himself, the way he conducts business as a leader, could also be attributed not just to his upbringing, but it could be contributed to his time in the military, where a lot of that professionalism, the respect and dignity, the decorum of carrying yourself as a professional tends to do well when you get into the arena of coaching and high school football. So, once again, ladies and gentlemen, when it comes to, I got to get back to safety. We got to get back to this because this legislation that is starting to brew its ugly head and starting to poke a little bit at utilizing medical data. Uh, this is all about the player safety. This is not a uh, some weird, you know, somebody behind the green magic curtain as a Wizard of Oz trying to take medical data for their own personal gain. And I don't know what they would gain out of that anyway. But we got to make sure that safety always remains at the forefront of any conversation when you're talking about helmets, when you're talking about on field play, and when you're talking about protecting players. Just like the NFL, when they took a lot of feedback, not just from the players and not from the coaches, but from the Players Association to make sure that more robust player protocols are put in place so we can actually take care of players. When we don't do that, and when we don't do that well, players tend to take matters in their own hands and maybe put themselves back into a game when they should be out. That's what this data is for. This data is to help protect the kids. It's all about safety. It's all about the security of these kids. It's all about ensuring that they can enjoy the great sport of football. There's a lot that comes out of this sport. It's not just things that, you know, the violent part. There's a lot of strategy, a lot of strategery that is behind it. But ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening to Peak AM 1460 FM 101 The Answer. And when we come back from the break, we will have our guest host on.
He's here.
How long is this break?
Um, let me take a look.
Have a seat, man. Have a seat. Have a seat. Because God, I got to use the bathroom so bad.
This is your mic. This is your headphones.
Okay. How long is this break?
About 2.5 minutes. I know.
This is the last break, right?
You will also after this break, there's gonna be a segment, and then it's gonna be the ad break, and then it's gonna be your papa.
Okay.
I'm gonna put you on cue.
Go ahead and put the helmets on. Make sure you can hear, or the helmet, the headphones.
Okay. Start speaking. I need to test you.
Testing, testing, testing.
All right. You sound good. Hey, you sound good. All I need to do is level you up, so that way we evened out. So that when we try to go live, his audio will be at the same level as yours. Will be when we try to put the audio there, it will be the same level. Same to the video that we're gonna put on.
Pretty just rock and roll with me.
I haven't got a chance to see you. Tell you congratulations, man.
Huh?
Congrats. I know I texted and tell you, but doing big things, bro.
You know, having fun, having fun.
That's what this life is about, ain't it?
Got to.
It ain't a rehearsal.
I love that. Use that. It's a
Did
good
you
one.
rest? Also, during the segment at the end was going to be a gym rant, and it's about a red light security.
Okay, is Jim going to be here?
No, I'm going to play the clip of there. So
Okay.
I'm going to have to give you the signals just in case this means 30 seconds. You know this is 10 seconds, right?
Right.
And if I 4, 3, 2, 1, and then I play the clip, and it's simple, and it's about 2 minutes.
Of just Jim's rant.
Yes. All right. Better get this going. Are you ready? Are you ready, you two? All right, let's go.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Peak News, and thanks for joining us on this special segment, the first ever of its kind, a sports segment here on the Peak News. I'm Roland, Rainey, your guest host. I'm in for the Watchman, Hyam Goldman. Hyam, if you're listening in, hopefully we're doing you proud today. Once again, this is a very special segment where we're talking about sports, and why am I, Roland Rainey, the guy who's talking about sports? Well, that comes with a whole lot of things. Once again, besides being your newly elected city councilman for District 6, I am also an employee of the Denver Broncos. I've been involved in football at the semi-professional, collegiate, and the NFL level for quite some time. And it is great to be here speaking with all of you for the first time about sports. And speaking of sports, it is my honor and my privilege to bring to you our guest today here on the Peak, and that is head coach for Mesa Ridge. That is Jerimi Calip. Jerimi, welcome to the Peak.
Thanks for having me.
Well, thank you for being here. I know it sounds like you've already had kind of a adventurous day, but we love the fact that you are here with us. And to get us going, how about you give us, I already gave the listeners kind of a sneak peek into your background, collegiate, and what you're currently doing. But why don't you go ahead and give us a little bit of what your background is, how you got started at Western Oklahoma State, and what got you here to being a head coach of Mesa Ridge?
Tell you what, started back in Oklahoma. Grew up in a farming community, and in small towns, you're either playing football or you're working or probably going to church. So I ended up getting a football scholarship coming out of high school, my senior year, going to Southwest Oklahoma. Went there and actually stayed there for a few years. And before I joined the Army, joined the military to still feel that sense of team and belonging. And, it was a chance to kind of hone in on some leadership skills and whatnot. And from there, I ended up getting stationed here, Fort Carson, for 8 years.
Okay.
And stayed here all 8 years.
Guy. There you go.
Oh, yeah. Got out and had an opportunity to get into coaching with a good friend, a mutual friend, Trevor Hudson, and been here since then.
You got to love that journey, ladies and gentlemen. Small town USA, as he mentioned, farmland. If you're not at home farming or if you're not playing football, then you're probably in church. And I think a lot of you out there, listeners of the Peak, can resonate with that wholeheartedly. And then all of a sudden here, Jerimi, you have become this, not just a football coach, but you also teach. And you teach a lot of different classes, probably a lot. I don't know if it's too many to list here, but give us a sneak peek into some of the classes that you actually teach.
Oh, man, I've ranged from my background is in business, and so I've taught several business classes, health, PE, speech. I'm an avid teacher, which is advancement via individual determination. So I've had the opportunity to kind of be able to help and support my school any way that the leadership asked me to.
Wow. Ladies and gentlemen, as I mentioned before, and I hopefully didn't disappoint, you're talking with Jerimi Calip today. And Jerimi is definitely one of those individuals here in the Colorado Springs region who is doing great things on behalf of not just the school, but our student population. Earlier in the segment, Jerimi, we were talking about the Broncos helmets. I was going on about this major investment, about the Broncos Foundation, the helmets. You got to be a part of that process. Saw you there at Mitchell High School and that entire process. So, what do you think this investment? What does it do for your program, and how do you plan on leveraging it?
Tell you what, the past issues of CTE and all the studies, and I feel like football's kind of been under attack for years now. So for an organization like the Broncos to step up and take note of that and to help the high schools out and say, hey, we're gonna lead this charge and we're gonna make sure that our high school athletes are safer. So it's been a great. I don't want to speak for everyone, but it's been tremendous for us specifically.
I'm so proud to be a part of that process and have you here with that. So great to hear. Glad that you were able to get here. This has been phenomenal for us. Looking forward to hearing more from you. Ladies and gentlemen, you are listening to The Peak, AM 1460, FM 101.1, and we'll be right back.
So, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
So, if you don't know who Jim is, just in case, he is the guy that records his opinion. So what he does is that he records opinions and he sounds recorded, but it actually is. So just letting you know about that. So that's what he does. That we put in the clip during the fifth segment.
So after this,
After this, there will be ad break, and then after that, I will. We're gonna do a bump out. A bump out, like it's a closing.
yeah, I'll close with some comments.
All right, thank you.
So the comment I'm gonna close out with is your thoughts on the portal, and we'll make it quick.
Okay.
So right now the commercials are gonna roll. Then we'll come back from commercial, and then we'll bump out
Okay. How long you been doing this? How long you been doing this?
right here.
Yeah.
First day.
First, you got your hands in everything. Everything. That's all right though, man. You doing good stuff.
You'll see. You'll probably hear how I got involved.
Gotcha.
Yeah, from Mayweather. You'll
2.5.
2.5 minutes.
For the commercials.
you're gonna have to make it really, really quick.
Okay.
Like really quick. Well, welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to the Peak News, and thanks for joining us on this special segment today, a sports segment, first of its kind, here on the Peak News. I'm Roland Rainey, your guest host. I'm filling in for the Watchman, Chaim Goldman, and we have our special guest here in the studio, the head coach and also educator at Mesa Ridge, Jerimi Calip. Jerimi, as we're getting ready to finish out today's segment, I just want to give you an opportunity to talk about the NCAA portal. What are your perspectives, especially being a former college player? What's your perspective on the portal?
I'll tell you, I believe it's great for college athletes, but I really feel like it's had a negative impact on high school athletes from the standpoint of getting recruited at the higher levels. However, with kids getting an opportunity to get paid, I think that's always a good thing.
You know, I talked about that earlier about, I think one of the biggest things is kids definitely getting an opportunity to be compensated for their name, image, and likeness. However, what are going to be the impacts to the collegiate institutions? Because you're looking at these teams becoming super teams. What are going to be the long-term impacts? Did you wish that during your time in college there would have been something like that?
I tell you what, man, I would have loved that to get a paycheck, whatever amount. That would have been great.
Well, hey, look, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for joining the Peak News. We hope that you enjoyed this special segment today. And also, thank you to the Watchman, Chaim Goldman, for inviting me to be the host of today's special segment. Also, thank you to Salem Media and all the Peak News sponsors. Remember, we air Monday through Thursday, so we'll be back tomorrow. Stay tuned, ladies and gentlemen. And remember, the Peak, we say the quiet stuff out loud.